Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava, page 36b at the top of the page, with the words Yachzir Shilafanav. Coming from the bottom of 36a, Rabbi Akiva says that the belligerent ox belongs to its owner and to the injured party. They're considered partners in the ox. If there's extra value, then he shall return it to the owner of the previous ox. The Mishnah should have ruled, if it says, he shall return it to the owner of the previous ox. The Mishnah should have ruled that the surplus shall be returned to all of them. In other words, all the prior injured parties, since they all share joint ownership of the belligerent ox. Rava said, actually, the Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael, who says that all the injured parties are creditors, and for the difficulty you pose, that instead of stating that the owner of the latest of the oxen gored in succession gains, the Mishnah should have stated that the owner of the earliest of the oxen gored in succession gains. That can be answered. With what are we dealing here? We are dealing with a case where the first injured party seized the ox to collect payment from it and consequently became like a paid bailee with regard to damage it causes. Therefore, he is responsible for any subsequent attacks by the ox. Similarly, if the next injured party seizes the ox from the first as compensation, he becomes responsible for any subsequent attacks. The Gemara asks, if so, instead of the Mishnah stating that if there is surplus value left in his ox after he pays the owner, he shall return it to the owner of the previous ox that was gored, it should have stated that he shall return it to its owner, since half the value of the belligerent ox belongs to its owner, who is not responsible for any later damage it causes. Ravina said that this is what the Mishnah is teaching. If there is surplus value with regard to its damages, in other words, the latter injured party sustained less of a loss than the previous one, that injured party shall return this surplus value to the previous injured party. Similarly, when Ravin came from Eretz Yisrael, he related that Rabbi Yochanan said the Mishnah touched on this topic with regard to a bailie's negligence. The Gemara asks, in accordance with which opinion did you interpret the ruling in the Mishnah? Was it in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael? If so, say the latter clause of the Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon says that the division of the compensation is as follows. With regard to an innocuous ox worth 200 dinars, that gored an ox worth 200 dinars, thereby killing it, and the carcass is worthless, the injured party takes 100 dinars from the proceeds of the sale of the belligerent ox, and the owner of the belligerent ox takes the remaining 100 dinars. If the ox, after goring the first ox, but before compensation had been paid, again gored another ox worth 200 dinars, and the carcass is worthless, the owner of the last ox that was gored takes 100 dinars, and with regard to payment for the previous goring, the owner of this ox that was gored takes 50 dinars, which is half the remaining value of the belligerent ox, after 100 dinars were paid to the last injured party, and the owner of that belligerent ox takes the remaining 50 dinars. If the ox, after goring the first two oxen, but before compensation had been paid, again gored another ox worth 200 dinars, and the carcass is worthless, the last injured party takes 100 dinars, the previous one takes 50 dinars, and the first two divide the remainder, each receiving 1 gold dinar, which is worth 25 silver dinars. The Gemara continues, In the ruling of Rabbi Shimon, we arrive at the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who says that the ox belongs to its owner and to the injured party, who are considered partners in the ownership of the ox. Is it possible that the first clause is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Ishmael, and the latter clause is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva? The sages said that yes, this is the case, as Shmuel said to Rav Yehuda, Shinina, leave the presumption that the entire Mishnah, I think Shinina means sharp tooth, maybe large tooth. It could be referring like a nickname referring to sharp one. I think that's what it means, but I'm not sure. Leave the presumption that the entire Mishnah follows one opinion and follow my interpretation. The first clause is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Ishmael, and the latter clause is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. It was also stated that Rabbi Yochanan says the practical difference between the opinions of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah is with regard to a case where the injured party consecrated the ox. If he is a partner in the ownership of the ox, his consecration takes effect. If he is considered merely a creditor, the consecration is ineffective. Evidently, Rabbi Yochanan also holds that the dispute in the Mishnah corresponds to the dispute between Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva. With regard to the gold dinar mentioned in the Mishnah, we learned in another Mishnah there, 90a, one who slaps another is liable to give him a selah as a compensatory fine. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Yossi Haglili, he is liable to give him 100 dinars. The Gemara relates, there was a certain man who slapped another. Rabbi Tovia bar Matana said, an inquiry before Rav Yosef, asking him whether the selah we learned about in the Mishnah is referring to a Tyrian selah, which is worth 4 dinars, or whether the selah we learned about in the Mishnah is referring to a provincial selah, worth only half a dinar, or 1/8 of a Tyrian selah. Rav Yosef said to him, you learned this in a Mishnah, and the first two divide the remainder, each receiving 1 gold dinar, worth 25 silver dinars. And if it enters your mind that the Tana teaches monetary sums using a provincial selah in order to calculate compensation, let him further divide the value that the first two litigants receive and teach a case where the belligerent ox gored an additional ox, so that their shares decrease until they reach 12 dinars and 1 selah apiece, which are 12.5 dinars. The fact that he does not do so indicates that the Mishnah does not use a provincial selah, whose value is less than 1 dinar, and therefore a gold dinar cannot be divided in a manner that leaves each party with whole coins. Rav Tovia bar Matana said to him, this is not proof. Should the Tana have continued teaching additional cases, exhausting all possibilities, like a peddler selling his wares who advertises every item of his merchandise? The cases cited in the Mishnah suffice to illustrate the point. What halakhic conclusion was reached about this matter? The sages resolved it based on that which Rav Yehuda says, that Rav says all references to coinage mentioned in the Torah refer to Tyrian coinage, kesef tzor, whereas all mention of coinage in the statements of the sages referred to provincial coinage, kesef medina. Therefore, a person who slaps another is fined a provincial selah worth half a dinar. Following the verdict, that man who was slapped said to Rav Yosef, since the fine is only half a dinar, I do not want it, as it is beneath me to collect such an amount. Instead, let him give it to the poor. Then he retracted his decision, and said to Rav Yosef, let him give it to me, and I will go and sustain myself with it. Maybe Rav Yosef said that. He was very poor, maybe. I don't know. No. I don't understand this, what it means. If you already said that it's not enough to, you know. Okay, anyway, let's continue. Rav Yosef said to him, since you already committed to give it to charity, the poor have already acquired it, and now it belongs to them. And although there are no poor people here to acquire it, we, the court, are the hand, the legal extension of the poor. We represent them, as Rav Yehuda says, that Shmuel says, orphans, to be continued,